Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. And today's random review is Darryl Duke's 1978 film The Silent Partner, starring Elliot Gould, Christopher Plummer, Susannah York, an early performance by John Candy and Celine Lomez. This is a Kino Lorber Region A Blu-ray, which contains a nice interview with Elliot Gould about the film, which is about 20 minutes, and there's also a commentary by three film historians, Howard Berger, Steve Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson. This is a film that was shot in Toronto as part of that kind of era of tax dodging. It was cheaper to film in Toronto because you get tax breaks. This is a strange little film. There's so much going on in the film. It's a Christmas film. It's about Elliot Gould, who works in a bank with Susannah York and John Candy, amongst others. But he's really a man who lives a fairly solitary life. He has fish. He's kind of hard to work out. His fellow employees don't really know who he is. He is kind of a man alone in this kind of middle class bank environment. I mean, it's in a mall. There's a whole thing about being kind of trapped in this slightly weird society. He's Jewish, but they celebrate obviously Christmas and Easter, so he's not really involved with that either. And one day in the bank he finds on the kind of copy paper a note about "I have a gun." He starts seeing this strange Santa hanging about, and he puts two and two together that this Santa figure is going to rob the bank. So he kind of figures out this might actually be a good opportunity for him to steal some money too. So he kind of builds up a mechanism where he's putting some money under the counter, and then when the bank robbery does happen, he's pretty much saying that the bank robber gets away with a lot more than he actually did, and Elliot Gould's character kind of hides the rest. So the robber is Christopher Plummer, who quickly figures out from television reports that he didn't get away with as much money as he thought he did. So there's obviously something going on, and he starts contacting Elliot Gould. Now, the role of the bank robber was originally going to go, or they maybe thought about Mick Jagger or David Bowie. They wanted somebody kind of perhaps a little androgynous, because Christopher Plummer's character is probably bisexual or transgender. He does go through changes during the film. He wears eyeliner and fake eyelashes and painted nails, and as the film kind of progresses, he changes the same way Elliot Gould's character changes. Christopher Plummer is also rather sadistic. This is a Christopher Plummer performance that you've probably never seen before. He has never really played somebody this nasty and sadistic, but there is also a kind of vulnerability to his performance. It's a really interesting performance, and I can't really think of another character in a film quite like this one. So Elliot Gould, who is a very insular kind of guy, once he realises he's actually got away with this scheme, he kind of wants to hide the money and maybe go away later. Doesn't want to immediately kind of give up his job, and but he feels he kind of grows as a person. He feels a lot more smug and kind of successful because he's gotten away with this. And Susannah York, his relationship with her is really interesting. She's having an affair with the bank manager, but they have an interesting kind of relationship. She wants to perhaps get to know him more, but he's kind of standoffish because he's still got this concern about Christopher Plummer. Through machinations in the plot, he gets Plummer off the streets for a little while, but then Plummer gets more and more aggressive, more and more violent as he wants his money. And then it kind of moves forward. So this is set at Christmas, and then it moves forward to the following Easter. Elliot Gould's father's died, so he has even less connections with the world. But somebody from his father's care home turns up, Celine Lomez, and they start seeing each other, but she perhaps has an ulterior motive. Again, I'm not going to go into spoilers because it's full of just really interesting things. It kind of lulls you into this kind of tense thing, but then there's like a couple of outbursts of like really extreme violence. It's Christopher Plummer's going full psycho. It's a wonderful film because it's shot in Toronto. It's not, unless you've seen Cronenberg films, so it's not a kind of familiar place. It's not like it's shot in New York or LA, so there's a kind of otherworldliness to it. The fact that the bank is in a mall, there's a kind of weird artificiality to it, as the characters kind of evolve. There's not too many films that kind of all four of the lead characters kind of change and evolve, and their personalities almost change. It's a really... See, the first time I watched it, I thought it was good, but it didn't quite work. It didn't quite gel. But seeing it again, it just gets better as you get the nuances. You get the kind of character motivations. There's also like a fairly huge kind of homoerotic undertone to it. I mean, the one or two scenes where Plummer and Gould are actually together in the same scene, they're almost at kissing distance. There's a whole jealousy thing going on. It's almost as if they have their other partners, but they actually just want to get together themselves. It's just such an interesting film, but you can probably see why. Apparently it got a good critical write-up at the time, but it just kind of disappeared. And you can kind of see why. It does have some nasty violence in it, but I think that is required just to show the real danger that Elliot Gould's actually in, because through part of the film he kind of just sees this as a kind of intellectual game. he has a chessboard, so obviously in films, if you have a chessboard, that automatically makes you clever. So he kind of views this as kind of a game, but then obviously the stakes go through the roof when people start dying. It's just a fascinating little kind of forgotten gem from the 70s, I think. It has a really nice jazzy score. It was originally from a Danish book by Anders Bodelsen, and it was made as a Scandinavian film from 1969, which obviously I haven't seen, and I haven't read the book. And this was made 1978. It was written by Curtis Hanson, who obviously is famous for LA Confidential and other films, but so he did the script for it because I think he was under the impression that he might end up directing it. But Darryl Duke, the Canadian director, directed it. So it has an American star. Christopher Plummer's Canadian, Susannah York's English. So it does kind of have this mix of talent, mix of acting styles. Christopher Plummer is just astonishing in it. Again, he is really sadistic and really nasty at times, but in the end you actually somehow feel sympathy for him. It is a bizarre film. It's full of little twists and turns. It's just such a nice little film, and I would urge you to try and find it if you haven't seen it before. I had it on a cheap DVD before Kino Lorber have relatively recently released this. I would say the print isn't astounding on the Blu-ray. The first 20 minutes, I would say the print's not that great at all, but the second half of the film, it's a much cleaner print. So again, I don't know whether it just had a bad print, and that's why the first kind of 20-25 minutes of the Blu-ray isn't like astounding Blu-ray quality. But the second half, the picture is a lot crisper and cleaner. So I would certainly recommend picking up. If you're a fan of 70s films, again, there's an element of it that feels like a kind of 60s upbeat caper film, because there's lots of films in the late 60s, early 70s, like The Hot Rock, that were kind of breezy and bright, kind of heist caper films. So you kind of get that feeling a little bit with this, but then it just gets a lot darker fairly quickly, because it does have these explosions of brutal violence, which obviously might put some people off. But again, I think it's necessary just to show how dangerous Christopher Plummer's character actually is. A little forgotten gem that, up to me seeing it a few years ago on DVD, I'd never even heard of it. But I would certainly recommend The Silent Partner from 1978. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know in the comments below if you've seen The Silent Partner and what you think of it. And hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying thanks for watching.